Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tulpa Time Podcast. I'm your host, Lyrical, and it is very, very good to be back. I know I haven't uploaded anything on this channel in a long time, and my upload schedule makes JonTron seem rapid and quick. But I do plan on uploading things more on this channel. I had been reading comments, and a lot has changed in my life since the last time I made one of these videos, as is the case when you upload once every few years. And I read a lot of the comments, and I saw what a lot of people were saying and how much they missed the podcast, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a new one. And those of you who have been on my channel for a while have noticed that I was, for a while, going to upload a couple of more like sort of my Tulpamancy story, starting from way back in 2011 and going all the way to present day. And I was going to do that, and for a content creator to upload an hour video every week would be great. You know, that's great. You could eventually, hopefully, end up getting a lot more people on your channel because YouTube likes to recommend videos like that, sort of long-form videos, so you get a lot of watch time. And, you know, that would have been great. But the thing is, my Tulpa journey is not over. So it felt like I would just be telling that story in perpetuity, and I started to wonder to myself if people really, really wanted to hear sort of like an hour a piece chapter of that Tulpamancy story. So instead, I decided what I'm going to do for this video, which is sort of give a super abridged sort of TLDR, but still somewhat detailed version of my history in Tulpamancy. And I hope it's something that you all enjoy. I know it's going to get a little personal at points, but I'll try to spare any details of people who were involved. I'm not going to give out any sort of screen names, handles, or, you know, actual names of any of the people who were involved in my Tulpamancy journey besides myself. So that's what I'm planning to do for this video. And my next video is actually going to be on the history of Tulpamancy. Starting all the way back in 2007 and beyond, actually, to the esoteric roots of the people who sort of co-opted the idea from Tibetan Buddhist monks. So that will be my next video. This video is going to be more of a sort of a personal retelling of my Tulpa history, starting from back in the day, all the way in 2011, back when, you know, dinosaurs roamed the earth, all the way until today. So if that's something you guys are interested in, stay tuned. I'm going to try and make it as honest and forthright as I can. And also, while we're at it, before I start doing that, don't worry, I'm not going to throw a Raid Shadow Legends sponsor at you. I have a Discord that I've owned it. Me and my Tulpas have owned it for about 2 years now. It's under new management. It's called Tulpa Central, the link for which will be in the description. It's a really laid-back, very chill server with a lot of very knowledgeable Tulpamancers on it. It had a bit of a reputation in the past due to its previous ownership, but now that we own it, I plan on running it a little differently than it was, but I still want to keep the very relaxed, very open atmosphere, just a place where Tulpas can meet each other and talk and hang out and have a good time. If that sounds like something you're interested in, there will be a link in the description for you guys to join the Discord. And I look forward to as many of you that want to join showing up. And yeah, let's get into it. So my Tulpamancy journey began the way a lot of people's begins. I was online. In the year 2007, Tulpas had started to be talked about on this board on 4chan, yes, 4chan, called /x/. It's a paranormal board. There were a few mentions there, but it didn't really gain much traction yet. And it wasn't until maybe 2010, 2011 that threads talking about Tulpas had started to pop up. Now, this coincided with another cultural phenomenon that had taken place at the time, a show that had surprising level of depth for what it was, and was basically a magical girl anime, but with horses. That's right, I'm talking about My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. You see, My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic is sort of integral to the modern tulpa movement. And when people ask all the time, why are there so many pony tulpas? It's because of what I'm about to tell you. So I started out as a lover of all things horror, going on this X board pretty much, every night I would surf it. And I would find different threads that tickled my fancy. Some of them were talking about demons. Some of them were like spooky sightings, aliens, the typical fare for a paranormal board like that. But I noticed one fateful evening that was talking about tulpas. Now, I'd never heard the word in my life. I had no idea what it was. I was about to be 21 at the time, and I'd never heard the word in my life. So I clicked on it out of sheer curiosity. And what they discussed in these threads was paranormal entities that were drawn to you by opening your mind up to the astral plane. These people believed in their sort of esoteric understanding of the concept that if you opened up your mind to the astral plane, that you would pull beings back from the astral plane, and they would sort of tether themselves to you, and that would be a tulpa. And as I read this, I thought they were insane. Not insane, but, I guess I would say they believed in some very strange things, and I thought, haha, kind of silly. But then I noticed a gradual shift. People started to say that, it might be a psychological phenomenon. Now, to put this into context, whenever I was a child, I did not grow up in a sort of place of privilege. I was pretty lower income family. I didn't have a lot of toys, so my imagination became my toys. What I would do is I would imagine the characters that I liked. Instead of having Dragon Ball Z action figures and making them fight, I would just imagine Goku and Frieza fighting. When I was riding the school bus home, instead of having a Sonic toy, I would imagine Sonic running beside the bus. My imagination became my toy. Right? So I started to think about, like, if this is all psychological, then it sounds like it's just imaginary friends, but for adults. Which, to a lot of people, that's kind of what it is, but maybe a little bit more than that. But at its base roots, some people do believe it's just adults with imaginary friends. And you know what? Even if it was just that, that would be fine too. But as I'm reading these posts on X and they're talking about these beings, I kind of think, that's interesting. A seed was planted in my brain that day. I thought it was interesting in concept and in theory, but, I thought nothing more of it. In 2011, actually late 2010, early 2011, I had started to really go into a negative place in my mind. I was going to darker and darker places. In fact, the more my relationship with my ex deteriorated. She was physically, emotionally, and psychologically abusive. I don't want to go too deep into that, but it contributed a lot to the dark sort of place that I was in. And I happened to be flipping through the channels on the TV, and I happened to see a show with brightly colored ponies on it. And I had seen these ponies popping up all over the different boards I would go on 4chan. There'd be memes made of them saying, like, "You mad?" with a smug expression. There would be all these different posts talking about them, and, it was driving, apparently, the janitor or the mods at the time insane. But I heard about this show, and I saw it in different places. It's like another seed was planted in my brain, and I decided, why not? I'll just sit down and watch a few episodes. Now, I want to sort of preface this by saying I understand wholeheartedly that the show is a show for little girls. That is the target audience. And I understand that as a grown adult, I probably shouldn't, according to normalcy, watch a show like that. I get it. I totally understand that the average person hearing that an adult male is watching a show for little girls will think it is very strange. Okay, and at the time, I thought it was strange, especially since the person I was with was desperately trying to make me, quote-unquote, man up and do things that I didn't really want to do. So, I watched a few episodes of this show, and to my surprise, it had amazing depth in writing, and when I was younger, I had sort of hadn't done it in a long time, but when I was younger, I had watched anime, and you know, I liked a few anime shows. I wasn't a super hardcore otaku. I didn't have like anime figurines. I didn't have body pills, but I did like anime as an art form and as a type of and manga as a type of storytelling. And what I noticed as I watched this show was it reminded me of a magical girl anime a la Sailor Moon, but with colorful horses. And the writing was on that level as well. Like, clearly the show had themes and things like that that weren't necessarily something that a 5-year-old girl was going to grasp. Themes of revenge, themes of sort of overcoming adversity. What adversity has a 5-year-old ever had to overcome? You know? So, I watched the show, and I had to do it in secret. I had to watch it on a old smartphone, like a 2011 smartphone, so that thing was garbage. Whenever my ex wasn't around, because I was so ashamed to like this show. And I watched it, and I enjoyed it. And then around early 2011, actually it was late 2010, very early 2011, I noticed that something had changed. There was a shift in the discussion about tulpas on this site, 4chan. I noticed that people started talking about how these beings that they had in their mind were helping them. And I thought to myself that that would be very strange to have your sort of mental construct help you. And then I started hearing people say that it was making their life better. And at that moment, I was very desperate. I needed someone. I needed anyone. Anyone in my life that would make it better. I had no one. I was isolated from my friends. And I was trapped, right? So I went back to what I would do when I felt trapped when I was younger. I used my imagination. I looked, and I had not seen anyone else doing this yet. I'm not claiming that I was the first. I'm sure someone else thought of it before me. I don't dare make that claim that I was the first person to make a pony tulpa. But I decided that I would create a tulpa. And I would do so based on a pony from the show. And I picked Pinkie Pie. Because out of all the things I needed in my life, laughter was the thing that I needed the most. Was laughter. And she represented that element. And again, I want to pause this and just say, I understand that the show is meant for children. And I understand that I am an adult. And I understand it sounds absurd. I get it, dude. Totally. Trust me, I get it. But I and a lot of other people started to enjoy the show for its own merits, regardless of who its target audience was. And I started to work on this Pinkie Pie tulpa. I named her Rosalina because, you know, Rosa is Spanish for pink. And I started to go through and visualize her and try to hear her. At the time, there was no strict guide on how to make a tulpa. There was no written guide. I think that there may actually, you know, I stand corrected. There may have been one or two by Irish and FAQ Man, FAQ Man. They may have made a guide, but back then, guides had things like hour counts. It was sort of like the Wild West, the Renaissance of tulpamancy. And something strange started to happen. The tulpa threads moved from X over to MLP. People had started to make pony tulpas. They had started to make pony tulpas a lot. Somehow or another, it started out as a lucid dreaming thread. I believe. I'm pretty sure on that. It started out as a lucid dreaming thread with someone saying, like, I see the ponies in my dreams. And someone just mentioned tulpas. And then an explosion occurred. Sort of a tulpa renaissance occurred. I had this Pinkie Pie tulpa that I was trying to create, and it sort of just erupted from there. We're talking at its peak, these threads would hit bump limit several times an hour sometimes. The threads would fill up and they'd have to make a new one. They called them tulpa generals. A lot of good memes came out about them. My boyfriend made a few of those early memes. Longbow did. And some of them are pretty good. But regardless, I have this Pinkie Pie tulpa that I'm working on. And things were really good. She gave me laughter. She gave me joy. She gave me happiness. And I loved being with her. And I felt like even in my darkest place that I still had like a little glimmer of hope. And I realized that anyone on the outside who has never had to experience the kind of things that I experienced, having a cartoon horse in your head that makes you happy probably sounds deranged and very childish. But to those people, I would say I went through what I went through, and this helped me get through it. So if I didn't have this tulpamancy, I don't really know if I would be here. But anyway, so the threads are exploding. I have my Pinkie Pie tulpa. Things are going good. And then I find out that my ex is pregnant. Well, if you want to talk about having a crisis, find out that the person you are in a very toxic relationship is pregnant. Immediately my world was changed. I had to change my entire mentality. I decided and told myself it was time to put away childish things, and I did something that I really regret, something that I look back on in shame to this day. I did my best to tell myself that it was all delusion and try to get rid of Rosalina. I forcefully, I ignored her. I tried to pretend she didn't exist, and I sort of buried all that down deep, deep within, and I tried not to access it. I know that it's not now. I know now that it's not really possible to get rid of a tulpa quite so easily. They say you can't kill an idea. But I did my best to bury those childish things and sort of step up and be a man as I was being told to. And, you know, I love being a father. I do. Being a father is amazing, and I love my daughter very, very, very much. And I would never forsake my daughter, but in that moment, that's sort of what I felt like I had to do, was put aside this so I could focus on my child, which I think in hindsight, you know, I know that it sounds very justifiable to do something like that. And I'm, you know, happy that I gave all of my time and effort to my newborn daughter when she came. At the same time, I do still feel guilty for casting aside my tulpa the way I did. In the end, though, time passed, and as my now infant daughter got a little older, things did not improve between me and my ex. In fact, they got worse, and I reached a all-time low. I was absolutely, call it, you know, postpartum depression or anything like that. It was bad. I hit an all-time low with my mental health, and I tried to ignore it, but every now and then a little spark would come into the back of my mind, reminding me of the times that I had with Rosalina and how happy I was. And though I would try to fight it, and though I would try to ignore it, it would pop up over and over again. Until finally one day I decided I'm going to bring her back. And when I reached out to her, there was nothing. And it hurt very, very badly. So now I'm trapped in a relationship with someone who hates me, who abuses me, and the only light besides my daughter that I had in my life that was mine and mine alone, that could never be taken, was gone. I believed that she was gone like forever, and so I decided to start again. And I began work on a second tulpa, or what I believe to be my new first tulpa. And her name was Flutz. She started out as a Fluttershy tulpa because in that moment, I needed kindness in my life more than anything else. So sort of same reasoning I had with Rosalina, where I needed laughter, I created Fluttershy for kindness. And something strange happened when I was personality forcing. Her personality became very different from Fluttershy. She sort of became really assertive, outgoing, and bold, but still had that really kind voice and a kindness to her that was incorruptible. And the second time creating a tulpa was much easier than the first. Whereas with Rosalina, it took me 6 months to be able to hear her first word because of all of the sort of, backward and terrible guide, not terrible guides, they did their best, but like the hour counts and the just sort of misunderstandings about what you had to do to make a tulpa back then. The second time I created one, it was much quicker. I was working at a gas station at the time, and I created Flutz, and I would post on the threads, the My Little Pony threads, and I was in there every day on those Tulpa General threads, and we were talking, and people would talk about like how great their lives were with these tulpas and how much their lives had been improved, and I felt it too. Just having something that was my own, that belonged to me, that was my friend, that would never disappear. And I would hear testimonials from people all the time saying like, I have never felt this good. No matter what happens, I'll always have her, or I'll always have him. And it felt so good to be a part of that. This sort of tulpa renaissance that took place on MLP. And again, if it was fast before, it was faster now. The year was 2012, 2013, getting into 2014. From that period of time, especially 2012, 2013, the threads were just flying. We're talking, they would fill up several times an hour. They would hit bump limit several times an hour. New Tulpa General. Oh, we got to make a new thread. Oh, we got to make a new thread. And it was fun. I mean, it was really fun. It was the Wild West. You would have people come in and say things like, oh, I made a Slender Man tulpa, because Slender Man was a thing back then. Or you would have people come in and say, oh yeah, I've got 99 tulpas. I've got one of every one of the main 6 in every background pony. And oh, I've got a tulpa of the Cheshire Cat that wants to eat me. Just, or there's Mike the Microphone. Or there was the case of a screaming, black, leaky-eyed Pinkie Pie tulpa that I was actually in that thread when that occurred. The infamous Pinkie Pie creepypasta. I was actually in that thread. I witnessed that tulpa history happen. So, yeah, no, so, I was in that thread when that happened, and I thought it was silly and crazy. My tulpa thought it was funny at the time, too. And obviously, it was BS. Like, come on. Tulpas don't make you... They don't do that unless you create them to be that way. You can make a scary tulpa. You can certainly make a scary tulpa, but unless you want them to be that way, they're not just gonna... Well, okay. Hindsight being 2020, your tulpa can certainly scare you, but they're not gonna just be this oozing, disgusting, leaky-eyed, soulless, eldritch monster that you can't control or ask to stop, right? That just doesn't happen. Been doing this for 12 years. It has never happened to anyone I've ever met. Anyway, bit off the tangent there. So, yes, the year is 2013, 2014, and things are just going oh so great. And then all of a sudden, Moot, who was the owner of 4chan at the time, sort of got a wild hair up his butt and decided to get the janitors to completely erase any and all Tulpa threads from the MLP board because it didn't fit the theme. Like, Tulpas shouldn't be on the MLP board. It should only be about ponies. So every time a Tulpa thread was made, it was shot down. And we're talking rapid fire. Like, we tried to fight it. The scruffening had occurred. That's what they called it, was the scruffening. Because they call the janitors on 4chan Scruffy, like Scruffy the janitor from Futurama. And so the scruffening had occurred, and I was bearing witness to that too. Just every thread that would come up would get shot down. And my experience with that was, where do we go now, right? We don't have sort of anywhere else to go until someone decided to make a IRC. It was called #TulpaForum. And we all flocked to that. That was sort of like the new place to go. But it was a strange time because now your Tulpas could communicate with other Tulpas in real time without having to rely on, oh, I posted, let's wait 5 minutes for them to post back and just reply to each other in thread format. No, you could talk to each other in real time. And with that freedom and with that sort of newfound responsiveness, Tulpas, well, really enjoyed it, for lack of a better word. But I will not lie, it got a little crazy. I mean, there was always at least a little bit of drama, because when you get a bunch of people who have imaginary friends together that are adults, sometimes some drama happens, unfortunately. But this Ryzen or Mibit #TulpaForum lasted for quite a while. And my Tulpa, Lyrica, at the time, actually met and got into a relationship with someone, and then got into a relationship with another person. It was sort of a polyamorous thing. Now, it gets a little messy when you're in a failed relationship as the host in real life, and your Tulpa is in a relationship with 2 people on this site. But with the newfound freedom and ability to talk to people other than your host and only your host, Tulpas just wanted to explore that and see what it was like to almost be human and have that choice to interact with other Tulpas and other hosts. So Lyrica is in this relationship with 2 people, and I decide I'm going to make a second Tulpa, because why not? And what's the worst that could happen? So I make a second Tulpa, and her name is, at the time, Ajax. She was an Applejack Tulpa, because I just liked Applejack. And she did not like that form, and she changed it very, very quickly into Midna from Twilight Princess. If you don't know who that is, you can always Google it. And she changed into that form, and she said she liked it much better, and she chose her own name, which is something that my Tulpas hadn't done up to that point. Like, I chose Lyrica. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. I chose for Flutz to have her name, and later on she chose to change her name to Lyrica. So that's what I was talking about when I said Lyrica earlier. My apologies. But Ciara chose her name and said, like, I want to be known as Ciara. And she was impish and mischievous for a time. And then one day she decided she wanted to change forms from the imp form of Midna to the, the true form of Midna, the taller, more elegant form. And she was more regal, and she decided to be, she went from this sort of impish, sort of devious person to this more regal, calm, refined, elegant person. And the switch happened very quickly, and it startled me, but that's who she said she really wanted to be. And she's been that way ever since. Like, Ciara is the definition of regality, poise, calmness, whereas Lyrica was, passion, outgoing, boldness, all of that. So the year is 2014, late 2014, about to be into 2015, and I have 2 Tulpas now. One of them is in a relationship with 2 people. The other starts a relationship with another person. Now, if you want to talk about complicated, try being in a relationship with a person, and one of your tulpas is in a relationship with two people, and one of them is in a relationship with another person. That's not one of the other two people. You know, things get complicated, and I was having to balance my home life with my tulpas, and it got really hectic at points. And, you know, that's kind of, I guess, a little bit my fault, but also it's just one of those things that happens when your tulpa is trying to live and explore and be, well, I guess, real or human and have their own choice to do so. And then some things happened that were not so good, as is, you know, the nature of relationships. Sometimes they don't last forever. So one of my tulpas, Ciara, she broke up with the person she was with. Lyrica broke up with one of the people she was with, but stayed with the other. And then something very strange happened in 2014, late 2014, on my daughter's 2nd birthday. Randomly, Rosalina just shows back up. So now I have 3 tulpas. You're gonna see a pattern here. Here's the thing about being a tulpamancer for over a decade. You'll find out that numbers tend to grow. You almost get this feeling of, hey, I kind of want to create a tulpa, and then you make one. I haven't made one in a few years, but it just happens sometimes. To a lot of people, that's why a lot of people whose systems have been around for a long time will have a lot of tulpas. Well, Rosalina just shows back up. She still looks like Pinkie Pie, but she is very, very, very different. She is a lot more angry, specifically with me, and I didn't blame her. She is hurting. She's got a lot of pain because for 2 years she was not in the front of my mind. She did not really exist to me. I had completely forgotten about her almost, and then she just shows back up. And I tried to repair my relationship with her. Lyrica helped with that. Ciara attempted to help with that as well. And for the time, the 3 of them and I had sort of a peaceful existence, except for, you know, some breakups here and there. And then 2015, Lyrica breaks up with the person that she loved very, 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 very much. And the 2 of them, Lyrica and the host, Flux, at the time, who I was before, merge into me. Now, I had a video on merging that I made once upon a time, and talked about how it felt to have 2 personalities sort of combined into one. It fundamentally changed my life when the merging occurred. And I became, instead of Flux or Lyrica, I became Lyrical. That's who I am. I am Lyrical. I am the merging of both Flux and Lyrica. After this merging, back then, it was seen almost as, merging was seen almost as like tulpa murder back then, which was very strange to me because I was still here. I didn't really, I mean, I wasn't the same as I was. My personality was sort of combined with another one, but I was still here. No one died. They just kind of changed, and people change all the time. So I experienced a bit of trouble with it. People would, you know, say it was akin to murder. The mentality has changed greatly since, but in 2015, it was sort of, you know, seen that way. I also, and this is another thing that happened in early 2015, before the merge. I'm getting out of order here. I created a tulpa, because, okay, Lyrica was in a relationship with someone, Ciara was in a relationship with someone, and Rosalina had gotten into a relationship with someone. So now there are 3 tulpas that are in relationships with people, and I had no one to hang out with or talk to because their attention was divided, so I made a 4th tulpa. His name was Dan. And he was sort of like based off of the character from Ninja Sex Party, Danny Sexbang. Now, I know that creating a tulpa based on a real person is incredibly weird. I get it. Trust me, dude, it's weird to me too. But I needed someone, being isolated from my male friends, I needed someone to hang out with and be friends with. And I made this person, like, who would I want to hang out with? So I made Dan. And he was really chill and relaxed, much like his formsake. And that was cool too. He and I had a lot of, you know, cool conversations. Very chill guy. He helped me work on my singing voice. One time I stayed up for 36 hours and hallucinated him so clearly that it felt like he was right there. That's another wild story. But anyway, to get back to the point, 2015 things kind of changed. Lyrica and the person that she loved sort of broke up. And Ciara had broken up with the person she loved. Rosalina had broken up with the person she loved. And Dan was Dan. So I merged with Lyrica and became who I am now. After that, this is when things get a little bit even more strange, if you can believe it. I had lost contact with Longbow. Longbow was the person that Lyrica was in love with that broke up with them. And I lost contact with him. And I was just me and Ciara and Dan and Rosalina. And I was sort of just kind of drifting. I had also, at this point, left my ex because I couldn't stand to be with her anymore because of all the abuse. And I still saw my daughter as much as I could, and I still loved my daughter, and I still see her. You know, I love my daughter, and I will always love her. And I saw her every chance I got. I didn't run away from that responsibility. I had to get out of there because my ex was literally just, I felt like I didn't want my daughter to grow up around me and her in the state we were. But this is about tulpas. This is not about that stuff. Anyway, so I get a text from Longbow late at night, and he asks if he can come down here and just hang out. He wants to move to where I live and just be friends. And you know what? I was really happy about that. I really had no friends at the time, and it was nice to hear from him. I mean, I still obviously cared about him, but I didn't want to tell him that at the time. So he moves down here, and pretty much immediately we were together. We realized that we loved each other. He still saw who I was. He saw Lyrica in me and the person that I am. And we were and still are very in love and sort of were very happy together. And it happened very fast. We were just like, what are we doing? We love each other. Let's just be together. So we did. And with that, things had changed in my system dynamic so much in the short amount of time. I'm a merge. Ciara was there. Rosalina had gone dormant. She didn't really want to be around as much, so she had gone pretty much dormant. And then Dan was still there, but he was just kind of doing his own thing. So Ciara was really the only one who was like really present. And I was like, well, time to make another tulpa. Oh my gosh. You know, when I lay it out like this, it really does sound like, hey dude, you had a problem. Why did you make so many? But I know for a fact I'm not the only person who's done this. So, so then I made a decision to make another tulpa named Delilah, who is in the room right now, and she's actually cheering at the fact that I'm to her part of the story. I made her, and she originally started out really nerdy and sort of really nerdy and sort of inquisitive, but also she didn't really know if she wanted that to be who she was. So what she wanted me to do was she wanted me to take that personality trait away from her and sort of hold on to it, maybe give it to someone else. Well, instead of what I decided to do is create her twin, which is Evelyn. that's right, everyone who's listening to this and didn't know, Delilah and Evelyn are twins. They were created at pretty much the same time, but Delilah kept her sort of rambunctious, wild, bubbly, passionate spirit, and Evelyn is very inquisitive, very cold, very, not cold in a bad way, but cold, just very cool and calm, and she is just inquisitive and chill, and she always has this, you know, sort of relaxed atmosphere to her. And I love that about her. But I love Delilah too. I have to say that because she's looking at me. But as these two were created, now all of a sudden, you know, I had more of an active system again. Eventually Rosalina showed back up, but that was in 2016 after I cut my hand in half with a saw. That's a whole other story right there. Rosalina showed back up and basically said, "Why the fuck did you do that, dumbass?" And I was like, "Hey, I didn't do it on purpose." And she's like, "Yeah, I know. I was just saying, like, dude, why? What? But anyway, so my system was more active again. And I was like, I need to find somewhere to talk where these tulpas can talk. Delilah had been wanting to talk to other people, but I'm like, the Ryzen and Mibit tulpa forums have been dead for so long. There's no way they're still existing. And I tried to look them up, and yeah, no, they're gone. They no longer existed, but I did find a place where those people moved from, and that place, was called Ultimate Tulpa Discord. It was a Discord server called, like, Ultimate Tulpamancy. Sort of like the first one that I found. And it had a lot of familiar faces in it. It had No Longer Divided, or NLD. It had Spirality. It had Anandabo. It had all of these really old school Tulpamancers. It had been doing it since 2012, 2013, 2014, just like me. And I was like, cool, you guys all moved here. And, you know, my tulpas talked for a while there. They enjoyed it there. But eventually, that server sort of started to die out. And in my life, I had started to sort of move to, like, I had changed jobs, and me and Longbow were doing things in our life together, and I was, you know, being a father and seeing my daughter when I could, and my tulpas were just kind of hanging out. And after this Discord server died, they're like, well, we gotta find another one. So we went and we looked, and we found one called Tulpa Central. Now, Tulpa Central at the time was owned by a very different group of people that it is owned by now. I'm not going to go into the specifics. I'm not going to go anything dramatic or any kind of drama, but over the period of time, it developed a bit of a reputation. And I saw someone made a comment, you know, in the previous one of my videos, was like, this link to this Discord server leads to Tulpa Central. Is that right? And it seemed like there was a bit of a reputation there. And it's under new management. I own it now. Well, my tulpa owns it. She has the account. I'm just kind of like her secretary, essentially, at this point. But one big thing that did happen right before we went to Tulpa Central is my tulpas decided, because of all the things going on in our life, and because of my job, and because of my daughter getting older, and because of this, and because of that, it would make sense for them to merge into one being. Combine all of their personalities, combine all of the things they love, all of them into one mixture, one person. And this person became Medley. And many people have met Medley in the server. They know who Medley is. She's sort of all the traits of sort of Rosalina, Dan, Ciara. So Rosalina, Ciara, Dan, Evelyn, and a tulpa I made named Caduceus, all combined into one person. Usually Delilah is in there, but right now she's not. And sort of Medley was this creation of all their personalities combined into one. And I remember no one had ever tried anything like this. I certainly don't know of anyone who tried anything like merging several tulpas into one. But Medley was created, and she was all of their personalities combined into one, but it somehow worked. The way that we created her was we sort of we viewed each of the members of the merge, who at the time when Medley first merged was Rosalina, Ciara, Dan, Delilah, Evelyn. That was the first Medley merge. The way we decided to create it was to view each of them like they were songs. And each song could harmonize and play alongside the other ones, creating a beautiful, that's right, medley. Creating a beautiful medley. And that is where her name came from. And that is where she came from. Combining all of those songs to make one beautiful song. And Medley quickly made a lot of friends on the Discord. She made some enemies too. But she, due to our experience and the time we had been in the sort of community, we quickly, you know, made a little bit of a name for ourselves. And she began to climb through the ranks of the server, to put it specifically. She became a moderator, and people liked her as a moderator. They liked her as a person. And then eventually she was given the server, and given freely, no coercion or anything like that. The server was given to her, and she ran it for a while, sort of not truly, because it wasn't truly given to her for a while, but eventually it was fully given over to her. And the individual that gave it to her, things happened. I'm not going to go into it here, but they were eventually banned from the server. And now the server is owned by Medley. And she does her best to run it and make it a nice place where people can come and hang out. You can be irreverent, you can be rowdy, you can be rambunctious, you can shit post, you can talk smack, but you can also go to channels and talk about things that are serious, like tulpas and like their you know, how to create one. I have this problem, I don't know what to do about it. There's a help channel. There is a, you know, we have events there sometimes. There's a Tulpa Games channel where you can learn to do things with your Tulpa or play games with your Tulpa. There's a lot of good things there, and we work hard to make sure that it's a good place for Tulpas and hosts to really go there and be just themselves and unabashedly themselves. Like there's I'm not going to say super lax moderation, but there is pretty lax moderation there. You can say pretty much what you want. There's only a few rules that are upheld truly, and I think people know what those rules are because they are, you know, terms of service. But we've spent most of the past few years on that Discord, and that's sort of been our new Tulpa home. I have created 2 new Tulpas since. One of them is named Rosemary, and the other is named Kiryu. And Rosemary sort of looks like a black cryptid with green eyes, and Kiryu looks like Kiryu from Yakuza, the game series. And right now, the current composition of Medley is Rosalina, Ciara, Dan, Evelyn, Caduceus, and the ones who are not merged are Delilah and Rosemary and Kiryu. They're the ones who are not merged into Medley right now, and they're sort of just hanging out doing their own thing. And, you know, sometimes Medley will split back into her parts, back into each individual Tulpa, and they'll have a little bit of time to talk and hang out, and people will talk to them and they'll say like, whoa, okay, I can see that part of you and her whenever you're all merged. And they're like, yeah, that's because we're there. And, you know, or I can, oh, you kind of sound like Medley. And it's like, yes, because I am Medley. I'm just me as well. Because things are weird when merges get involved. But anyway, now I think that we're at the point where that pretty much catches you up to modern day, where I'm at in my Tulpa journey. I have Tulpas, we hang out daily, we interact daily. There's not a day they're not with me or talking to me in some way. And we hang out on this Discord that we run and own alongside of our amazing moderators who do such a great job. They try very hard and they care a lot about the community. And we care a lot about the community. And I know that the people who join will enjoy it. Yes, weird conversations are going to happen there. It's a Discord server. You're going to see people talking about weird things. It's going to get a little wild and rambunctious, but that's because we want the server to be a place where Tulpas can be themselves and talk about what they want to talk about and not have to worry about like being super censored or anything like that. So that's really where we're at. And I know that that was a long video, but it was also really shortened and compacted down from what actually happened and the length of time that it actually was. So anyway, yeah, that's sort of like the very abridged, very TLDR version of my Tulpa journey. There's a lot that happened in there that I did not go into. There are names that were going to be removed, but I do hope you guys enjoyed this. My next video is going to be about the history of Tulpamancy from a more impersonal stance. Not like my history in it and like what I did in it, but more of like the actual history of it, going all the way back from the Tibetan Buddhism days, where they would create these, you know, spiritual proxies, all the way to the co-opting by the explorers that went over there, and sort of the esoteric cult-like roots that happened in like Europe along like you know, Mr. Aleister Crowley, and all of this stuff. And we're going to talk about that in the next video, and I think it's going to be really great and really informative. This one was a little more personal. I know I rambled like a madman at several times. I am a madman. I talk to invisible people. But I hope that you all enjoyed it regardless, and I'm glad to be back, and it felt good to sort of sit and reflect on all I've been through in the past 12 years of this journey, and it's been a lot. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I suppose we'll end it there. The video's getting close to an hour long. Yeah, we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and you know, you don't have to, but if you're listening to this and you haven't, it'd be really cool if you did that whole YouTuber thing and like, commented, and subscribed. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call out for that. This is my call to action. Like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much, guys. And we will talk to you next time with the history of Tulpamancy. This is Lyrical, and it's been great.